Well, hello again. It's us, Craig and Jane, at the Craig and Jane Show, all about psychic things. We're going to be talking about all things connected with the mystical world. And yeah, going to talk about all that today. Although, actually, we shouldn't really be calling it the mystical world, because that seems to assume it's something different from this reality. It's something removed and strange and odd and airy-fairy. So I suppose it's about, the unexplained, perhaps, some of the unexplained things. But we'd like you guys, if you're joining us here for the first time, to put your questions afterwards in the comments too, because we've got a nice little community developing around this channel. Subscribe it if you're here for the first time too. And we'll tell you all about our world. But let's have a look first at some hellos.
You forgot then.
You handle that bit, Jane.
Yeah. Right, Maria. Hello from Sweden. Lovely to see you again. Thank you. Kay. Whispers of Serenity. Good evening. Good evening, Kay.
Whispers of Serenity. That's quite a
Claire.
good title.
Hello, Craig and Jane. Everyone from Claire and Yorkshire.
Hi there, guys. Nice to see you.
Chris, was it Christ? Hi, everyone.
Christ, yeah, it's Christ.
How are you?
Good. I was hoping you'd come one day.
Dear.
So it's going to take it up a notch. And Zeba looks, hello from Tadworth in Surrey. Quite a few people from England here today. Normally we get lots from all over. Here we are from America, from Wisconsin. Hi from Wisconsin. Hi there, Georgine. Nice to see you. And Sheila, of course.
Good evening, Sheila.
She's in London at the moment, or in India. I think you're in India at the moment, Sheila, aren't you? So nice to see you again.
London still.
Is she at the moment? Yeah. So good to see you all, guys. We haven't planned to talk for today, but I've got a little clip coming up later on, and it can kind of sort of get us talking a bit, because there's a clip coming up halfway through the show of me arguing with Richard Dawkins, the arch skeptic Darwin's Rottweiler, they called him. And on the same show that I was on with there, called Enemies of Reason, Enemy of Reason, well, I'm an enemy of reason, was also a guy called Deepak Chopra, who you've probably heard of, famous, I don't know how he'd call himself, a doctor by profession, but now a thought leader, I suppose, in the world, really, isn't he? And we're going to be doing an interview with him next week. Up in London, which is going to be an absolutely fabulous interview. It's a real great to be having someone of his standing on the show. And, you asked me and Jane questions, but you imagine what questions you could ask Deepak Chopra as well, because I'm planning the questions that I want to ask him. I've got quite a few lined up. But we're also opening it up to you guys, if you'd like to see the question to Deepak Chopra. Now, we obviously can't take everybody's questions.
Oh, Craig, can I just interrupt you? Competition.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
All right.
So we can't take everybody's questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up as a competition. So if you have a look in the description of this video, you'll see there that there's a link to the contact page on our website. And if you want to go to the contact page and send an email, which will come straight through to me there, with a question for Deepak Chopra, you could win a seat in London to go and visit him. And the seats are quite a substantial, high price sort of seat. So it's a substantial prize. You need to be able to get your own transport there. All we're doing, the guys there have said, look, we'll supply some tickets. So 2 tickets for whoever seeds the best question, right? And so you can go, after the show's finished, go and have a look in the description below. You can go and see where to book tickets to see him in London. There's a link to the website there. We're going to be talking with him about his new book called Quantum Body. It follows on from his thoughts and ideas that he's talked about quantum healing in the past. So that would be quite interesting, right? So I thought I'd let people know that.
And I think you'd be very privileged, actually, to go and see this unique man, because he's really great at meditation. He's really great at consciousness, talking about consciousness and everything. So, to have somebody special like this, and you'll be very blessed to go and see him.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting, because Deepak was one of the first people to really come up with this idea about quantum and connect it to the idea of spirit. Because he's the first one really to coin that idea really rubs the scientific community right up the wrong way by taking their words like quantum, hey, that's ours, that's nothing to do with quantum. So people like Richard Dawkins, who I've argued with on TV on the same show as Deepak Chopra did, they're actually furious with the idea, really furious with the idea that you could possibly consider that we have like a quantum body, perhaps, or we have a quantum, we can heal through the quantum field, or that maybe we are in that quantum world and project this world from the quantum world. There's lots more thought about that nowadays, but Deepak, of course, was one of the first to seed that idea, and like me, he's very, very interested in the traditional teachings of ancient India, and has kind of brought those things together. So it's going to be interesting. So watch out for that. I should be doing the interviews on Tuesday. We hope to get it out live on Wednesday. If we can get the editing done, and if you hurry up, you can have a look, because I think I can't remember what day it's on, but it's on soon after that. The first talk with Deepak in London. So on the Safe Bank somewhere, wasn't it? I've got the link in there, so you can find out all about that. So any thoughts about these things, the quantum world? Perhaps we should start off a talk about what do we mean by this? What do we mean by this quantum world? It's a word that's bandied around a lot nowadays. I see a lot of psychics call themselves quantum psychics nowadays, and you hear quite a lot of people calling themselves quantum healers. Yeah, people have jumped on it.
That.
Yeah. So,
I must be a quantum seer then.
yeah, quantum seer, yeah, a quantum. Yes, quantum seer, probably what we do, because in a way, when you think actually in terms of predictions, the whole thing with the quantum world actually is that in the idea of time is very different when you start looking at quantum mechanics. We get so used to the idea that time starts, goes along a line and finishes, a directional time, that time travels like an arrow in a straight line. But could it be that our consciousness is perhaps not actually in this world, but our consciousness is somewhere else, in that other plane of existence that we could call the quantum world? And that's where consciousness comes from. That's where the spirit is, perhaps. And from that sort of other realm, as it were, we are in a state that is actually not in this world in its normal sense of time. And that perhaps when we die, we enter this other world of a different type of time that could, where everything happens all at once, or what maybe the past and the future can be the opposite way round. And maybe when we go into ourselves and look into where we come from, we might get glimpses of that. And perhaps that is where things like premonition and clairvoyance, or even be able to get glimpses of the past, come from. We tap into another level of reality that is the real us, and in that world, all sorts of strange things happen, all sorts of strange things where you can be in two places at the same time, where paradoxes happen, where light can be both a wave and a particle at the same time. Lovely, interesting, impossible to comprehend really with the normal rational mind, some of the ideas of quantum theory. So it's going to be very, very interesting to get some thoughts on that. There's no time in the quantum world. Possibly. But if there's no time, that means for there be no time, there has to be time, doesn't there? There can't be no time without there being time, because it's still a relative idea, isn't it? It's still an idea that not having time is just the same as having time, right? So you're still talking about time. So this is where it gets incomprehensible, how it's very hard to describe time in any other form than the way we know it here, because we can only understand time with our mind as starting at one place and moving to another. We can say, oh, there's no time in the quantum world, but I know what you're saying, Georgine, you're right, but it's one of those incomprehensible things, because it can't be no time or with time. It has to be something even more harder to understand than that. You know what I mean? It's like, for example, time happens all at once. Is that possible? So that would be no time, where time happens all at once. But that's still thinking like our time compressed down. You see, we can't really get our heads around it. And if the spirit world is in that quantum world, perhaps, if the spirit world is there, this is perhaps why the spirit people often say to us, you know, time here is different. And they never explain what it is, but they say to mediums, you can't understand the nature of time here. It's very different. But mark our words, the spirit will say, you know, it's nothing to worry about. We can see your world, you can't see ours. But it's like when you come to us, it's like a fraction of a second. It's like you're with us instantly. You know, it's like you pass into the next world and suddenly everything's with you, including all the people in this world, because time is so different. And they've often said, the spirit will say to us, you know, we can't describe what time's like over here. You know, if I have our spirit,
there is no time.
Sorry,
because there is no time.
Well, that's what I said. Is there no time, or is it just different?
Because time is different. Time goes quickly here, but over there, time is longer.
Yeah, that's how the spirit will describe it to us. Is it longer or shorter, or twinkling of an eye? It's like they say it's fluid. It can be changed. It can go fast, slow. It can move backwards and forwards. You know, which makes you think, because you know, if it all started with the Big Bang and the universe will expand forever until it dissipates into nothing at all, perhaps into the white light, or just end, so matter can't even form, where it's all so spread out that no atoms can come together. Eventually, in phenomenal amounts of time, it could all just dissipate and then maybe even come back to the Big Bang again. But it means that, you know, that time is irrelevant, really, when you think of it in terms of the quantum things, because even that is just an illusion. The whole concepts have always been that time's illusionary, really. Better give us another question, or I'm just going to go round and round in circles here. I need someone to bounce off with these sort of things.
That's a good one. Does that mean that death is an illusion?
Do you want to answer it first, or shall I say something?
Well, we both will.
Go on then.
Well, death is an illusion. Death is nature, isn't it? We come here and then we leave here, so the spirit goes on. Does it go on to a high consciousness in a divine place? Does it go into a place that nobody can describe? Because nobody's actually described the spirit world. They say it's all looks like this and look like that. What do you think?
Well, I think death is an illusion in many ways, because I think what happened is it's like we wake up. You know, when we die, we wake up. People describe it as like going down a tunnel of light. Well, I wonder if that's just the brain firing off at the end, like some of the skeptics say. Because I'm often reminded, as I've said before, that Carl Jung talked about in his Memories, Dreams, Reflections that he wrote at the end of his life. And he said that he saw himself sat there, and he knew that if he woke himself up, if he woke himself from the meditation, he would be no more, because the illusion would gone. Even he would be no more. But the reality was his dream that he was having there. He was like a figment of his own dream. So I am, my body, everything here is just me dreaming. And when I wake up, all this will go. But what will remain is the dreamer. So yes, I think that death is an illusion. Death is simply waking up. They say it's like changing clothes, taking off an old overcoat when we shed the body. I mean, that would be part of the case, because that would leave the spirit body. But even the spirit body is still part of the physical body. It's what energizes the physical body. And they say there's another body, the causal body, that carries the soul. So perhaps that's where we're focused. Perhaps that causal body is never born.
Perhaps death
and that is in the quantum world.
I was going to have lost it then. Perhaps death is just the beginning.
Yeah, well, of course it is.
It's
all part of the process, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like the way the Aborigines describe it. They don't say this time. They say that time flowers. It blossoms. It doesn't go in straight lines. It just flowers like out of the great universe. And that time is endless. And that it's just what we're getting is just one more flowering of a moment.
Do you want to answer this? We've got Mr. Humble on here.
Humble Pie. Better be careful with a name like Pie. He might understand maths, and he might give me some trouble.
He does. Protons.
The human experience of time results from observing planetary, galactic, universal motion. Yeah, I suppose the sun first and foremost, wasn't it? In fact, time and motion are connected. aren't they? This is what Einstein was saying. It's like, you know, time can only exist with movement. Take away movement and there's no time, I suppose, in many respects. You know, that time itself is, well, you know, we live in this clockwork world where we live in our normal existence. But when you start taking things into the big extremes, such as going the speed of light and things like that, well, then time, particularly when you look at the mathematics of it, starts to do all sorts of weird stuff. And, you know, our normal understanding of time becomes completely warped. So, you know, we can even prove that time's illusionary, really. It's just a psychological concept based on our experience of the world, in which we see movements of the planets, the stars, the world around us, and the idea of one moment has started and another one's finished. And a few minutes ago it was now, but now it's now, and then a few minutes ahead it's going to be now. You know, there's this other strange thing called now that we live in. But I think in the Western world we make a mistake because we live entirely on linear time. We're always living in this idea of going from beginning, middle to end, you know. But actually it's just one flow. We live actually in a timelessness. People say about you must live in the now, but actually I think that might even be a mistake. That's because animals live in the now. They live instantly from moment to moment. We've got to live in the whole thing. We've got to live in the now, the past, the present, the future. We've got to get a different understanding of time, which, as I said, I think people like the Aborigines and perhaps early man understood in a different way than we do.
Now is the time to put your spirit?
I don't think it is. No, we've got another 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'll take that now back again.
I believe he does.
Yeah, he does.
Maria. I'm going to ask him about that, actually. I don't want to give away any questions in case he's watching at the moment, but I know that I believe he has, and it might not be something he wants to talk about, so we don't know, because they're very personal things.
Yes.
So I'll wait and I'll find out and see. I believe he has, but I don't know if he's written about it before. But that's certainly one thing I think would be worth looking at, because those Nadi readers, and those of you who've had Nadis through this site, will know that it's mind-boggling. And how did these people centuries ago know about you now and all the details about your life in such detail? How did they know that? They had somehow conquered time. And ever since I had my Nadi done, I've looked at time in a completely different way. It triggered in me the idea of being able to see the future. I think if the Nadi hadn't come along, I'd have had so much resistance to the idea that you could see the future. It broke something in me, really. It broke an illusion. It broke a piece of ignorance in me. The Nadi said to me, look, you can see through time. We've seen through time. Thousands of years ago, we saw your life and we're able to tell you not only what's happening in your life, but what will happen, potentially, depending on my will. And I think, wow, so they saw something that really, they conquered time, as far as they were the first time travelers, you know. And I think when we start rethinking about how we see time in the world, we become time travelers. You know, we are time travelers. I am a time traveler. You are, when you see the right nature of time. Most people are stuck in the illusion of linear time. But I think when we can let go of our brain, as it were, and let go of our thought, which is very much ties us into time, and we just go into the fluidity of it, we go into the knowledge that in ourselves there's a timeless state, then that's how I believe we get the glimpses of the future and of the past too, which I think is just as interesting sometimes. You know, I'm going on. Something for Jane.
Oh, thank you, Craig.
Yeah, because I'm
so
talking
kind.
too much. Yeah, you talk with this.
Catherine, so can we reincarnate into a past life? Could I come back as a caveman? Or are you saying it's all happening at the same time anyway? What's your answer to that then?
And then you want to answer that one?
Not really.
Well, this is always an interesting thought. There's the idea. I mean, some people put forward this idea that eternal recurrence, which is another thing that fascinates me. That it's a bit like, if you've seen that movie Groundhog Day and other science fiction movies that have followed since, it's like they keep coming back to the same point and they relive that day over and over again, and then that next time they die in that one, and then they come back and they wake up and they live it all over again, but they change something slightly different and it changes the outcome almost, and then they come back again, and it's the idea is that the more times you go over it, you finally get it right. And this was an idea put forward, I think it was by Nietzsche put it forward, but so did Ouspensky put this idea forward, that there's this idea of eternal recurrence, that things are going over and over again, and all we're actually doing is reliving the same thing over and over again. So what we're actually doing all the time is changing our past, changing our past, changing our past, and changing our future by changing that, you know. And the same thought would occur that maybe we can even go back and change the past. You know, maybe the past is not set. We assume that once the thing's happened, it's happened. But could we not even perhaps go back and change the past to change this present moment? That we are actually time traveling into the future and into the past all the time with our thoughts. And even by giving a good thought to the past, we change the present moment. Because what's happening in our life is the unfolding of karma of some sort that we brought forward from the past. So the past is living in this moment all the time. You know, this moment that I am in at the moment, every part of it is dependent on something that happened before. What is now is the past manifesting. This is what, in many respects, is what karma's all about. It's the manifestation that everything manifests, and that the past, according to the theories from India, is that the good and the bad manifest, and that we will get later on other ripples from the past. It's not all manifested. There's other ripples from the past coming into this moment all the time. And what I'm doing now, and my thoughts now, my actions now, my good or bad thoughts will ripple into the future and change my existence in the future. So it could be that we could change the future by changing the moment. This is where puja comes in and things like this. But could we not also send thoughts back to the past and maybe even change the past? I don't know. I can't answer that. But I think in theory, it's certainly something worth thinking about. So it's a great question, and a very, getting me going. One for Jane, please.
See.
Yeah.
Hi, where can we read Jane's yearly predictions? Well, I haven't got time to do them next week, but I will do them the week after, because I do have my own YouTube channel. And so I do predictions, because I keep having journalists that want me to do predictions and put me in different magazines. But I will do them, and I will do them in December. I'll do them for the year 2024 and possibly go up to 2025.
Yeah, I think it's probably better to do a couple of years in advance.
Yeah.
I think that too, because so many of the things that sort of manifest now actually sometimes take a couple of years to come forward. And a lot of things you say sometimes for 2024, I found happen next week. You know, some of the things recently have just started to happen this week, I've noticed.
Oh, agility bits. Question. I went to a funeral today and I wondered if people usually watch their own funeral. Some people have. It has been known that they've actually seen there, and they've seen all these people crying for them and say, why weren't they like that when I was here, when I was alive? Look at them all coming out, hypocrites.
Yeah.
But people do watch their own funerals, and I'm sure Craig has that come through in his readings as I have as well. But yeah, and I think really it's a nice celebration of a life, because I can remember Frank that passed this year. It was, if one could say, it was a beautiful funeral, because they were giving out seeds for forget-me-nots, weren't they?
Yeah.
Out in the garden, and I'm sure he was so pleased. He had a good send-off.
Oh, I'm sure you attend your own funeral, most definitely. I mean, you'd definitely be curious, wouldn't you? And I mean, the most interesting one, I gave a eulogy for somebody's funeral. In spiritualism, they used to cut off and ask the medium, would you mind doing a eulogy? So, okay, I'll do the eulogy for somebody, you know, and they give you the main facts, and you'd add a bit more, because you're a medium, you know, you reassure people that life goes on and things like that. And I'd given this eulogy about this man, and I described and I told about it. And then demonstrating in a completely different spiritualist church some time later, I'm give someone in the audience some information about this man, and I'm describing his funeral and talking about his funeral and that. And I said, I seem to know this funeral so clearly. I'm talking all about it. And he said, well, actually, you gave the eulogy there because it's so and so. Oh God, So he obviously seen his own funeral. He'd seen me give the eulogy and indirectly gave me a message as I'm giving the reading. And I didn't know I was with that person. Because when you're doing mediumship, you're kind of like a channel. You don't realize who you've got because you're just like the radio saying what's coming to your mind, aren't you, Jane?
Yeah, you're tuning in, yeah. But imagine
so keep your questions coming, guys.
Yeah, Nana. I wonder if the TV program Quantum Leap is real, where a soul would jump in through time and space to jump into another body. What's your thoughts on that, Craig?
Quantum Leap was quite a good program. It was a while ago, wasn't it? That one, I remember it. And well, you see, it's feasible, isn't it? Because I mean, the whole talk now is in science again is that there's a multiverse, and of course scientists tear their hair out when you start making stories up about things like this. But if there's a multiverse, it could be that there's multiple realities where all that's happening now is happening a million times, billions and billions of times, in an infinite number of ways in an infinite universe. If the universe was completely infinite, I suppose, everything that's happened and could happen would happen an infinite number of times. Because suppose, there'd be an infinite number of universes, an infinite number of galaxies, an infinite number of variations in an infinite number of ways. So, in one universe is exactly the same as this, but, I put my hand up and I haven't in the other.
Like Total Recall.
Yeah, or in another, in another universe, I suddenly sprout a pair of antlers.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise you, but it would some people. So it starts to get into the absurd almost as well too when you start thinking about that. It's like the idea of you have an infinite number of monkeys typing an infinite number of randomly onto an infinite number of keyboards. They'll eventually write the complete works of Shakespeare by sheer randomness. There'd be infinite numbers, and there'd be an infinite number of those monkeys that rated an infinite number. So when you think about infinity, it sort of your brain goes boom, So Quantum Leap is based on the idea that you can jump from one reality to another, that there's multiple realities, but there would have to be limitations to those multiple realities for it to happen.
It has been known for people to enter other people's bodies and that and take over their bodies.
Yeah, so I don't know, where you could jump through time and space.
Walk-ins, I'd call those, walk-ins.
You see, I suppose when we see the future, that's what we've done, isn't it? When we see the future, our mind has gone through time and space. I can't take my body through time and space because my body's here as part of this reality.
So
but if my consciousness is out there in the quantum world, there's no reason that I couldn't took my mind through time. There's no reason I couldn't be able to observe what happened in the past or observe what's happened in the future. Because as I understand it, everything that happens remains, not just in memory, it remains as part of the universe. It remains as a vibration that's always there. We can look into the sky, and the stars we see in the sky now are stars from 2,000 years ago, because it takes 2,000 years from the light from those stars to come to Earth. So when I look at the sky, I'm not seeing the stars now, I'm seeing what happened 2,000 years ago. When a star blew up, that happened 2,000 years ago. Because the light's only just reached us. So we're actually looking at the history even in light. And I think all things that have existed exist in this sort of universal mind because everything is recorded, as it were. So we could look back. I'm sure if our consciousness was in the right place, we could look back and we could observe all that's happened. We could observe the dinosaurs, or perhaps we could observe the future. That's questionable because has it happened yet? I don't think the future has happened yet, because I think what's happened is a potential for the future has happened. And this is where free will comes in. This is where we are the time travelers, because we're using our will to travel through this world, or something like that. To be honest, I can't understand it. I don't think anybody could. But these are the questions. It's asking the right sort of questions is the important thing, I think. Anyway, I keep going off.
Oh, that's interesting. Teresa says, where in our body does the soul live? Or isn't the soul and spirit as one?
So do you want to have a crack
Well,
at that one?
I can, don't you think the spirit and the soul is one?
What do we mean by the soul and the spirit, I suppose, is the question.
Shouldn't it as one? Doesn't it go through the crown chakra and it leaves the earth plane?
I don't think the soul's in the body at all. I don't think even our consciousness is ultimately in the body. What we're aware of is the functions of our thinking. We're aware of the information coming through our perceptions. We're aware of all that happening. But where am I? Where am I? Am I in this world at all? Or am I, and you, and all of us, in some other place? Are we like a point of consciousness in the universe? And this universe is flowing through it, as it were, And but if that's the case, where in the body am I connecting with this body? I think we connect through the pineal gland, through the center of the brain, the third eye.
Yeah,
That's where I think our consciousness and where our control center is. But I am not there in the middle of my brain. If you did an operation on the pineal gland, it's not going to wipe away me. I am connecting through there.
That's run by consciousness, surely.
Well, the other question is it all consciousness?
Consciousness doesn't really...
No. See, the other question is we think in terms of a physical reality, but there might not be any physical reality at all. You see, it is an analogy for it, but
hit your head to the left side body. Is that?
Yeah, well, our brain works like that. Yeah.
And if you the other side and you hit your head there, it's controlling the left side.
Yeah, the brain has its functions, and also if it's all consciousness, well, why can't I grow a new set of teeth, or why can't I grow new hair? You see, so there are limitations, aren't they? And I often think, well, why is there limitations? Are the limitations because we have to live within an agreement? This is our agreement. This reality is our agreement. We agree that we get old. We agree that we die. We agree that this world is like it is. You can never know, really. So, any more thoughts on that one, Jane? Shall I do the movie now? I think we had a few sound problems there, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to put... Now, I was telling you guys about the Richard Dawkins thing, and actually the time is right for that now.
Yeah.
So here's my argument to the arch materialists, the arch materialists who don't believe a thing about mystical things. And it's pretty hard to hold your ground with him, but I didn't do bad, I think. This is the Rushes. This isn't actually what was edited into the television program itself in the end. This came about... This is the Rushes, what they call the extras, as it were. So just going to pop this on for you guys. Slow computer.
If I were talking to someone in the spirit world, I wouldn't waste time talking about tins of green paint. I'd say things like, what's it like being dead? What's God like? Things. I mean, can you see the whole of the universe? Can you see what everybody's doing? Why do you ask them such banal questions?
Yeah, good point. But I think what happens is that it's the way the mediumship works. Mediumship comes, I believe, from the non-rational, non-verbal parts of the brain, if there's such a thing. I believe it's like a holistic understanding. It's a blending of thoughts between myself and the spirit communicator. So often the things that will come to us may be things that I can grasp. It's not like a telephone call to them and able to give this. Sometimes we get what we call clairaudience, where it gives me the feeling of like hearing. But most of the time it's what we call a clairsentience, a sensing of the personality, the feelings, the sensations. And sometimes the smallest things can be very important. For example, my wife said recently to a sitter, I wanted to give you a tin of Bovril, not Bovril, Brasso, the cleaning fluid. And the woman had given that as the key word that she was going to be the key word to say that when I survive, I'm going to show you a tin of Brasso. They'd already pre-agreed that. So sometimes little things could be hugely significant. But if only it could be just like a telephone line. Us mediums are working through a very difficult form of communication, which is not like the normal earthly communication.
So that's why the spirits don't tell you things clearly, but you get these sort of vague, a word that sounds a bit like the word that the person's looking for, or something like... I mean, I was struck, for example, that you said something like, Simon Bennett, and there was a girl who said, oh, well, my boyfriend was called Ben and he had a friend called Simon. And I sort of wondering, why don't the spirits kind of talk to you more clearly than that? Why do they use this obscure roundabout, almost like solving a crossword clue?
Yeah, I think you could argue that people try to make things fit sometimes, and sometimes people do that. But I believe that sometimes what we're getting is we're getting the kind of the whole picture. It's a bit like when you're dreaming. When you're asleep and you dream, you've got a mental process going on, but it's completely different to the sort of mental process we use in waking life. And it's very similar with mediumship. We're getting the information almost all at once sometimes. It's a thought communication as opposed to a verbal communication. So words can be particularly difficult, names can be particularly difficult sometimes, because that's all out of the rational mind. I think this was probably here. Perhaps in times before we developed language. Maybe it would have made environmental sense for us to be able to communicate by telepathy when we couldn't use words. It would have made some form of sense if we had a gut feeling that the waterhole was poisoned, or that we were being stared at by dangerous animals. I mean, these things perhaps were there before language developed.
Well, in your performance the other night, you got a few hits in amongst the misses. Isn't what you're doing cold reading?
Well, depends what you call cold reading. This is something that a lot of the rationalists have come up with, is saying that what you do is you say something and people basically make it fit. And I think there sometimes can be cases where people do make things fit, and they do try to sort of use convoluting thinking to try to pull disparate things together again. But I think when you really examine the evidence, or what myself and other mediums do, you will find that a large proportion could never be explained away by something like cold reading. It's because there are sometimes such specific details that come through that there's absolutely no way that anybody else in that audience could ever take that fact as their own, but only the person that was the recipient of that message.
One of the things about specific information like that, which I agree with you, is impressive, is that only the stories which are specific are the ones that get repeated. I mean, you told us the green paint story just now. You don't go around telling stories where what you said, what you predicted, didn't happen. So there's a kind of one-way filter whereby only the impressive stories, the green paint stories, get repeated, and no doubt many viewers of this program will go away and tell other people about the green paint story. But you don't say, do you know, I went to a medium and he said that there would be green paint in my garage, and I went home and you know there wasn't. That people don't repeat those stories.
True. You're talking about selective memory, aren't you, here? That
Selective
people
memory and
kind of
selective
remember
repeating.
the things they want to remember.
Yes.
And I'm sure that would be the case for anything. I mean, I expect it's happened in science as well, I should think, where people have seen what they want to see. But I think if you do examine the body of evidence carefully, you will find that there is a large bulk of what is said is accepted by the person. I don't claim to be 100%. I think that would be arrogant to say that. I think I get a lot wrong, and I think other mediums do get a lot wrong as well, because it's such a difficult form of communication. But I believe that within it, there is a large body of evidence that would be suggestive of life after death, and within that too, there are sometimes things that are so very specific that you've got to think about it. Something that will stand out, that is, you know, so absolutely specific to that person, it certainly should be worthy of investigation by science, I feel.
Well, science is always ready to investigate things. The thing about science is that it investigates the whole picture. It investigates all the misses as well as the hisses, as well as the hits. It counts the misses as well as the hits. And there is a real risk that only the hits get published or get repeated. It does happen in science. I mean, there's a risk in science that I think it's called the desk drawer effect, whereby studies that apparently don't show an effect don't get published. They get stuck in the desk drawer, and only the ones that apparently do show an effect end up getting published. So there is a danger of a kind of one-way filter, which we have to be very careful of.
And it also can be, people like myself, people that are into all the mystical things, have beliefs. But so do scientists have beliefs. And the problem is, I think if you come to this subject with a pre-made agenda, to say it's all a load of nonsense, therefore, and then you start looking at it purely from the point of view, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish. When you start, these things are dealing often with human testimony. Just as it's more like a court of law in some respects, because human testimony in a court of law will have a person perhaps hung. But in in terms of trying to prove ESP or trying to prove the paranormal, that human testimony is analysed to the point that it becomes almost irrelevant. For example, often they'll say, oh, that medium asked 20 questions when he was given the reading, but the questions will often be sort of, your father in the spirit world is named George, is that correct? Yes. He was a big man, is that correct? Yes. So often things like that can get twisted and distorted. And I think the body of evidence really has to be looked at in such a way that we have to take into the fact that we're not dealing in the same way as we are with hard science. We're dealing with people, with people's understanding of this, with people's if you've convinced a person that that's their grandmother to the point that they're actually crying, I mean, surely those tears enough are perhaps proof that they've had proof that really is their grandmother that's making the communication.
I think it could indicate just desperate wishful thinking, perhaps. I mean, one of the things I noticed looking around the other night at your séance was that people did seem to be very, very anxious. They were on your side. I mean, they were really trying to help, and they didn't look terribly convinced.
I told them off. I didn't think
I know
very
you did.
much,
I know you
to be honest.
But time and again, you would say, and I thought, well, that's a hit, isn't it? But yet they looked sort of unconvinced. They didn't really look very persuaded by it. And then it was as though they were desperately searching around for a way in which they should make it a hit. For example, you got a Morris Minor the other night, and you said a black Morris Minor. And I went and asked the man afterwards, was it really a black Morris Minor? And he said, well, no, it wasn't black, but it was very dirty, so it looked black. And I mean, that's a very typical example of where they're desperately trying to embrace within the envelope of what you've said something that actually wasn't in it. So you've got them on your side, and again, the girl whose boyfriend was called Ben, and so it wasn't Simon Ben. It was a boy called Ben who had a friend called Simon. You sort of feel if you start allowing, and actually you were rather good at picking up on those cases where the audience might have thought it was a hit, but you, as it were, discounted it. I was rather
I think it's
impressed with
important
that.
You try to discourage people from making things fit, because I agree that would discredit any good evidence that I was likely to give. I would rather get a lot wrong and one thing absolutely right, rather than people try to just be helpful or try to make things fit in. And people do have a tendency to do that, I do agree with you. But it does not undermine the fundamental fact that in good mediumship, facts can come through that can, I believe, give absolute proof that the personality continues after death.
Do you see your role as essentially pastoral? I mean, are you trying to help people?
No, not really, not pastoral in that sense, because I'm not a great lover of religion in many ways, even though I tend to do this within spiritualism. I find that is my outlet to do the work. I feel that, in a way, it's just my duty, because if I do have this gift and I can prove that life continues, I'm almost a bit reluctant as a medium. I came from a completely different background. I came from a background of working in advertising agencies and all sorts of things, and was quite sceptical about the whole idea before it was proven to me first. And I feel that really, I don't think it's pastoral. I believe I'm helping people, and therefore I believe it's a wonderful gift, and I believe it must be used, and I feel it's my duty.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it, so
Yeah, that was that was a very memorable discussion. I mean, that what you saw there was 10 minutes of it, but it went on we were arguing like that, discussing like that for over an hour, and that's just a little clip from it. And Dawkins, you're never going to win with him. The highest you'd ever get with him is a stalemate. I think you can never finally ever. I don't think you could ever beat him, because he's coming from another way of thinking that really doesn't entertain the idea that consciousness can be anything other than something that's generated by chemistry.
He was brought up in a Christian background. So
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's probably why.
What do they call Jesuites?
Jesuits.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes, he was. His mother's still alive. I don't know. I thought he had lost somebody. I don't know if he lost a daughter or something. And I think he changed from that point on.
He's actually a very nice man, actually, in a lot of ways, but mind like this. And I think that program was actually quite unfair in the end, actually, because they filmed me doing mediumship at Camberley Spiritualist Church, as you know. And afterwards, the people, when they saw the program and they saw how they cut it down, they were furious, the people who had messages, because they said, Craig said this to me. And they said, they just wouldn't film me talk about it. So they tried to pick out all the the weaker
Yeah,
points
because
in
he
it rather than
probably-
the strengths.
He probably had rights over the editing. That's
Well,
why.
that's the problem. He can edit his own programs, and I'd love to have seen the rushes, which I've not seen, of what was filmed in the
Gosh,
church.
didn't you look
and
young there?
afterwards. He had a bit of hair left.
Quite fanciful
It only
there,
felt
weren't
like
you?
5 minutes ago. Aren't I now? You know.
Oh, you're a dude.
But it's quite. I always believe you know. I battled all of them. I battled Susan Blackmore, didn't I, and or others, and Chris French, and all the others, and you've argued with these points. But you'll never win against these guys. They're not really ultimately.
They have got an open mind, have
Well,
they?
they're using the wrong tools. You can't use science to understand consciousness, I think. It's because, you know, every scientific experiment they ever do has to have an observer.
What's that circus phrase they use? The Barham.
Barnum
Yeah.
effect or whatever, yeah. It was
Crazy, isn't
make
it?
things fit, basically. The problem with these atheists like Dawkins, but that is that they may have left the church, but the church hasn't left them
It's
that
true.
fast.
It's true.
So they turn science into another church with a closed mind.
That's
yeah.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like I said there, didn't I? I said on there that, you know, the problem is scientists have beliefs too. You're coming from a belief idea that the material world is all there is. Science measures the material world and does a great job inventing and discovering things, but it's only kind of dealing with a very limited level of reality, isn't it, really?
But that's
You
what's so good about Deepak Chopra. He is a very intellectual, clever man, being a doctor, and he's really thought about it, hasn't he?
That's right. And don't forget, now some of you might come in a bit later here actually, but we are giving away 2 tickets to London to see Deepak Chopra, who's going to be my guest later on next week. But have a look in the description, and if you've got an interesting question you would ask Deepak Chopra, you know, about quantum body, his new book's about the quantum world, about the concepts that he has, maybe with his arguments with Dawkins or something, or whatever, something that that might have intrigued you. He's a really clever man. This is a real opportunity to see the question. So have a look in the description, send me an email, which you'll be able to see through the contact page on our website there, and you can also buy the tickets there in the description below as well. You can also get tickets to come and see us, really, in a way. You've got Jane's link there to her readings. You've got links to our website as well. And my books. There we go. Something for Christmas for everybody. You can't think of a present? Go and get my dream book. That'll keep people awake at night. Doesn't seem right, does it? So, how are we doing on time? Hope your mic's all right now, Jane.
I think it is.
we're
People
okay.
will soon tell us, won't they? Nana, question. Have your thoughts changed since the earlier programme? What would you have said or didn't say that you would now? Do you have regrets? I don't think Craig's the person to ever have regrets.
No, I don't think I have. I there was no more you could. I don't, like I say, I don't think there was anything more one could have argued with him. I actually would have liked to spend a bit more time with him, just talk to him socially afterwards. Would have been nice, actually, because like I said, I know he argues and he tears everybody apart and he says all those people have got it deluded, but at least he's put in a rational argument, you know. And I'm glad that he attacks things like beliefs. You know, I went into that. I thought to myself, I am not going to mention the word belief, you know, in this whole thing, because that's what he's after. He's after to tear it apart. Oh, it's all beliefs. You just believe this. Just because you believe something, it isn't true. That's the core of his argument, really. So I thought I'm going to trip him up. And, you know, and like he says, you know, and he says, oh, well, you believe in God and so forth. And I said, who said I believe in God? You know, depends what we define as God. You believe in Father Christmas in the sky? No. Might be able to talk about God, but it has to be thought about in a different sort of way. And that immediately tripped him up, actually, which was quite fun. And I chatted a long time with my friend Phil when we were on walks and things together about how would I approach Richard Dawkins. So no, I went into it quite well prepared. And there's lots more to those rushes as well. But I would have loved to have had editing rights. You'd have seen a completely different program if I'd edited it, as opposed to his lot edited it. But there you go. You know, in television, they decide who's going to win and who's going to lose before you even start. And I think I put up a pretty good fight.
An illusion, Craig, anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, even that's
reality
an illusion.
shows.
TV. Those guys that saw me on, I've been on the Squid Game. I think you blink and you miss me, basically. I went on Squid Game, the challenge. I put a video up
Last
about
year.
that. but it's just come out. But I wasn't very impressed with the show
Well,
generally, to be honest.
I think it was a good thing that you didn't. I think it's a good thing you came out.
Yeah,
because,
once we saw me, I turned it off and we watched I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here with
Yeah.
Nigel Farage, which I think is much more
Yeah,
interesting.
but you were shaking when you come out of there because the cold.
Yeah, and Nadia's saying, after watching Squid Games, are you glad you didn't get any further? And
certainly
when I
was.
saw those horrible beds and
Yeah.
all what they're doing, and I knew we were going to have to jump across glass, yeah, I had a set. When that thing blew up in my chest, I thought, oh, just as well. But what a waste of time. You know, what a waste of time.
Why
Everybody
don't you
goes.
explain your hands so you can?
I couldn't move. Yeah, I was frozen solid. I was really quite
You couldn't
physically.
even
I couldn't
hold
hold a knife and
a
fork when I got
fork.
home.
In
did
fact,
I?
I had to put a hot water bottle on him.
Yeah, hot water bottles
because
in my hand to
he
get
was
working.
shivering, and the conditions. I was really angry actually
And
the way
I'm
he
a
was
tough
treated.
person.
Not that tough.
I'm a determined
I'm a
bloody
good
person.
woman, strong woman.
But no, I mean, it was, you know, it was silly. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if somebody would have died on that show,
Or been
frankly,
sued.
because they was just too, these programs need independent safety advisors, independent. And when they say independent adjudicators, it's someone they know all the time. They need some proper independent authority for these games that send in safety inspectors and people to
Because
judge
those
if
conditions
it's
they
fixed or
didn't
not.
allow for, it was freezing zero, wasn't
Well,
it?
so many fixed thing on that program actually, because people were being mic'd up with. You can't mic up 436 people or however many there was. You try. We've got 2 mics here and it goes wrong. You know, I mean, 3 mics it starts getting difficult. 4 it starts. 5 in a room's difficult. They start interfering with each other. 436 mic'd up people. Yeah, and it just so happened the ones that get through just happened to be mic'd up. You know. They were shooting everybody down.
All I can say to you,
the
Craig,
slightest-
is red light, green light.
Yeah, still gives me the shudders. It was a great set though. I was thinking there's a room there for someone to do a theme park, make a great theme park.
Oh.
Yeah, it's better than Dismal Land. That was my favourite theme park. Craig, you actually came across more rational and open-minded than Archbishop.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think I argued the case quite well. I must say it was a tough one to do. You know, you've got to be prepared for Dawkins. I think when a lot of people have argued with him, they got their face pushed in the mud. I watched Deepak Chopra had been on the same program with Dawkins there, and on that particular Enemies of Reason, they edited it down to make him look like an idiot. Frankly, I'm a brilliant man, but they made him look silly, and I thought that's so unfair. And then I watched another program today where he's arguing in a Mexican, I think it was, big thing where Dawkins and Deepak Chopra set head to head to have an argument. And I think Deepak Chopra there wiped the floor with him. So when you get in something edited, it's so different. You know, it's so different. And Dawkins was getting angry because he wasn't able to get his point across. When you've got the editing clips, you know, you can cut out the bits you don't like. So these things are better live. You know, it's like mediumship. You can tell if it's real or not if you watch them live. If you watch a medium on television very often, you think, oh, they're brilliant, aren't they? But they cut all the bad bits out. Whereas when you watch them live, you see, hey, how did they know that? You know? Yes, well, there we go. Yes, Archbishop Dawkins. Pastor Craig. Yeah. What are we doing? Coming. Question, is there any spiritual preference of being cremated or buried? There's one for you, Jane.
Well, I really haven't thought about that because I like living at the moment.
No, I mean, is it better for a person? And people asking, obviously, thinking, is it right to bury a person or cremate a person?
I think it's a
The
personal
end,
choice.
What happens at the very end of life?
Yeah,
What do
well,
we
it's
know
a
about that?
personal choice because it doesn't matter if you're buried or cremated because your spirit still goes on, doesn't it? Goes on to a better place.
I suppose different peoples have different beliefs. I know they cremate people, for example, in India usually because hot climate, you see.
What about,
But then when they do that, they
is
have
it
all
the,
special rites
Indians
before
or
and after.
Tibetans, or is it the Indians, North American Indians? They feed the birds,
The
don't they, the
Tibetans,
body?
they feed the
birds.
body to the birds.
That's right.
So their body's given back to nature, which is a nice thought.
Yeah.
I expect mine to be pickled and preserved for people to come and wonder at.
Just watch out for
A
woodpeckers.
bit like, I want to be like Lenin, you know, that people can come and walk around and say he was such a marvellous man.
Cool.
No, once you're dead, aren't you, ultimately, in that respect. And the body dies, The body deteriorates very quickly once you die. It's an incredible thing, really. Only the fingernails and hairs keep
That's
going.
right, 24 hours it
Yeah,
goes still.
and rot sets in within the body within a day.
That's nature, isn't
So
it?
it just shows that there's something sustaining the body, a life force. And once you take that life force away, whatever the chemistry of the body, if it was all just chemistry, the chemistry would keep going, surely. Some of it would, and some of it would break down. But no, the whole thing collapses all in one shot. And that's because the spirit's left the body. So whether you're cremated or you're buried, I don't think it makes the slightest bit of difference, personally.
In Italy, they preserve some of the bodies. There's a child that's been preserved 100 years ago because there was a scientist that preserved her body. And you can view it. Yeah.
There was yogis in India that used to do self-mummification.
How do they do that?
Well, as they were dying, they would mummify their body and then finally die. I'm not quite sure, but the
Is that what you want then?
self-mummification. That's what I do. Yeah. I've got to sit in meditation. I mummify my legs and I mummify everything. I've got one arm left, and someone's going to have to mummify that bit. I think the brain was mummified years ago, actually.
God.
Yeah. One more question then, and then I think we'll be done. Here we are. Do you think one day physics and psychics will be aligned? Yes. I liked Sri Yukswara's book, Science of Religion, actually, because ultimately, I think spiritual and mystical or psychic or whatever we want to call it will come together. I think what's happened is the sticky conscience, the difficult question of consciousness. While science and mysticism are both struggling ultimately to try to understand what consciousness is, science at the moment hasn't the faintest idea. I don't think mysticism really has the full idea because we can't explain it in a physical form. If people have spiritual experiences such as the experience of samadhi, then our whole experience of existence and the world is completely different. We see it in a different way when we've experienced samadhi, because we see, we're not our thoughts, we're not our memories, we're not our body, etc. So our standpoint, we haven't even understood who we are, let alone what we are, So science is kind of describing what we are, spirit is trying to describe who we are, and somehow those two have got to come together. And I think the only way it can really come together if we find some mutual ground, and that mutual ground will have to be consciousness, not beliefs in God and things like that. It has to be consciousness. That's the key to spirit. That's what's, like Deepak Chopra's talking about quantum body, I mean, I could toss that word out, quantum, and say spirit body, and it's the same idea, basically. But the argument there is that it's something to do with science, that science can somehow have to get involved in this. So it's a red flag to a bull, which I think is a great idea. But no, what it is ultimately, what is consciousness? And if we understand consciousness, then we might start to understand a little bit more about the nature of reality. And I don't think science can ever get to the bottom of things. I don't think spiritual things, mysticism, spirit can even get to the bottom of these things, because I think the universe is so vast and incomprehensible for the intellect that we could never understand it. In a billion years we'll never fully understand it, because it's so magnificent. What we come to in the end is just a sense of absolute wonder at it, and it's arrogant for science to think it's got all the answers. It's only scratched the surface. It's similarly arrogant for religion to say that it has the answers. We don't. We're explorers of consciousness. And that's when I think we get that idea through our heads. Then, yes, I think I think then perhaps that's when the psychic and the spirits and the physicists start to align a bit more, and we perhaps will get magnificent inventions. Who knows what consciousness is capable of too, Anyway, I reckon we're at the end of the show.
You finished your consciousness
But
now?
we haven't asked people about having another look in the description, and particularly to think about becoming a patron to keep all this going. We've been talking all this airy-fairy nonsense about spirit and everything like that, but the real world, we need your support. Born-again Christians, that you sign them £500 checks every 5 minutes. If you go in there and just give us a short little bit of money, help to keep all this studio going, help us with our kit. We're going to go and do these interviews and things like that. It all costs money. all these things are expenses. So please help support the Patreon channel. Go and become a patron. I'll put little extra clips up there every now and again for you and things. You can interact with me, but you know, I'll give you stuff, but think, can you give us stuff? Can you give us some help to keep this going? Help us to build this up and to help us to develop the centre that we're hoping to do. We need lots of money for that, but even a small amount helps keep all this channel going. And we do our time for free with this, you know, and so we thank you for supporting us, all those wonderful patrons that have been coming up on the screen there. We thank you for your help. So you can too. Have a look at the description. And we're going to say goodbye now, aren't we, Jane?
Yes,
okay.
bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye for now.